This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas. The information contained in this podcast is intended for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for individual professional legal advice. The podcast information was carefully compiled from vetted sources and references. However, Rose Resources outreach to safeguard the elderly cannot guarantee that you will not fall victim to a scam. Let's talk about scams. It's the must-listen show for anyone who wants to protect themselves and their loved ones from scams. Every Tuesday at 8 a.m. Pacific Time on K4HD Radio, Joyce Petrowski, founder of Rose, and her guests will provide valuable insights and practical tips on how to recognize and protect yourself from scams. And now, here is your host, Joyce Petrowski.
Good morning. My name is Brian Watson, Community Outreach Specialist for Rose Resources Outreach to Safeguard the Elderly. I am filling in for Joyce Petrowski this morning. She's going to be out next week as well, and then Joyce will be back. And so welcome to Let's Talk About Scams. We have a guest today, and I'll introduce him in a second. And the title of the show today is How Agents Investigate Pig Butchering and Other Scams. So we like to bring on people that are subject matter experts, and today that is the case as well. So today's guest is Christopher Scheer. He's a special agent with IRS Criminal Investigation. He was in the studio a second ago. Let's see if he's still there. There he is. Excellent. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Christopher?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me all right?
Beautiful. Thank you. So let's introduce you properly. So Christopher is graduated from the University of Wisconsin in 2007 with a degree in finance, investments, and banking. He worked in the private sector until about 2017, and then he was hired by the FBI as an intelligence analyst. And then in 2020, he became a special agent with IRS Criminal Investigation. He is currently assigned to IRS's Criminal Investigation's Phoenix Financial Crimes Task Force. And he's also a member of the FBI's Phoenix Cyber Task Force. He's worked a variety of cases, including Paycheck Protection Program fraud, healthcare fraud, money laundering, and crypto investigations, and that's why we have him here today. I'm proud to say that Christopher is a former colleague of mine at the Phoenix field office with IRS Criminal Investigation. We worked together for about 3 years before I retired. Christopher has a reputation for both being very smart and hardworking, and I thought it would be good to tap into his technical expertise today. So good morning, Christopher.
Morning, Brian. Thanks for having me.
Hey, so how long have cryptocurrency ATMs been in existence?
So they originated back in the mid-2010s. I think 2013 was when the first one was installed. That was in Canada. The first one in the U.S. appeared in 2014, and they've really ballooned in number since that time. Today, there are over 30,000 ATMs within the United States. Approximately 600 of them are here in the state of Arizona.
So tell me how they work.
So a crypto ATM is very similar to, what most of us understand is an ATM where you go and get cash using your debit card. So it's a physical machine, and you typically find these in convenience stores, gas stations, liquor stores. But you can walk up to these machines, and you have two options. Typically, you can put in cash, or you can use a debit card to purchase typically Bitcoin, but there are some machines that allow you to buy other cryptocurrencies such as Ethereum. So you can just put in your cash, and you tell it where you want the Bitcoin to go. So if you have a wallet, let's say at Coinbase, you can typically get a QR code that you would scan on the Bitcoin ATM. And that's basically telling the machine, hey, this is where I want the crypto to go once I purchase it.
So how much do they charge to use them? Are there any fees associated with using a cryptocurrency ATM?
There are definitely fees, and they are high. They're much higher than purchasing crypto via Coinbase, for example. These ATM machines are going to charge you anywhere typically between 10, 20, 25% of what you're purchasing. So the fees are very high compared to maybe 1 or 2% that you would pay purchasing through Coinbase or Binance. So the fees are...
I'm sorry about that. Sorry to step on you. So if I'm at home, I could purchase cryptocurrency through my laptop or through my own phone, couldn't I?
For sure. You could, using a laptop, you can go to Coinbase. I'm using Coinbase a lot, but there are many exchanges that would offer this service. They all have apps, that you can download onto your phone. So you could use your phone, just laying in your bed. You can sit there and purchase cryptocurrency if you want. Typically, you would have your bank account tied to your virtual currency account, and then that would allow you the ability to purchase whatever cryptocurrency you want. Bitcoin is by far the most popular. Ethereum is also huge, but there are literally thousands of different coins that you could purchase.
Now, these ATMs that are located at convenience stores and liquor stores and malls and all over the place, and you said there's 600 of them in Arizona alone. Can you withdraw cash from these ATMs, or they don't work that way at all?
I don't know if all of them work that way, but some, yes, you definitely can. You can actually sell cryptocurrency and obtain cash.
Which scams involve the use of cryptocurrency ATMs by the scammers?
So cryptocurrency in general is involved in almost every type of crime you can think of in today's world. Using ATMs specifically, you're going to see a lot of impersonation scams or imposter scams, which we can get into. There's, the romance fraud, investment fraud, where people are convinced to, purchase cryptocurrency. And that's one way that the scammers facilitate that. They direct the victim to these different ATM, kiosks where you can just put in as much cash as you want to purchase crypto. In those cases, the QR code is typically provided by the scammer to the victim. And the victim is probably being told, this is going to go into your personal account here. It's going to be safe. This is your account. Just scan this code. However, the victim goes up there, scans the code. Little do they know, it's going right to the scammer's wallet, and they're probably never going to see that money again.
So if someone has been scammed, what should they do? Let's say, they fell for the jury scam and they were convinced they owed money and they were given a QR code. They put money into the machine. They lost a few $1,000s. It went to the scammer's wallet. What should that victim do?
I would say the most important part right away is to contact local PD. Make sure they contact the police department and get a report written up. And hopefully, that victim will, keep your receipt, because you will get a receipt from that ATM that's going to have very important information that's going to allow law enforcement the ability to trace those funds, to see where they went, in an attempt to perhaps freeze them and try to get that money back for the victim. So reporting it as soon as possible is very important, because the crypto can move, can hop around real quick. It doesn't take long. So the quicker you can report it, the better chance you have of trying to get that money back. There's also, you can report it to, local PD. You can report it online. Another good avenue is going to be IBM's Internet Crime Complaint Center, better known as IC3. I would encourage victims to report it there, report all the information that you can, all the identifiers that you can give them. The more the better, in terms of, who are you contacting, what phone number were you using, what name did they use, what wallet address did your funds go to, because then the FBI, that gives other law enforcement agencies one specific, depository, let's say, where we can search for, these types of crimes, because most of the time, there's not just one victim. There's going to be many victims that are being scammed by this same group of scammers. So if you can try to lump that all together and see what information, each victim has reported, that gives you a better chance of being able to identify who's behind it, to try to get your money back.
From your experience, where are most of these scams emanating from?
So these scams are typically being conducted by large, transnational criminal organizations, based in other countries. So think, Nigeria, China, Cambodia, Myanmar, Russia. They're all over the world, unfortunately. There are huge scam compounds in Myanmar, for example, that have thousands of people basically being forced to scam people. That's a story we can get into if you'd like, but there are these huge scam compounds where, that's all they do all day is try to, scam victims. And most of the victims are in the US, and most of them are 60 years of age or older.
So let's talk about pig butchering. What is it, and where did that name come from?
So pig butchering, the name came from a Chinese term, which I'm not going to even try to pronounce because I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but it originated back in the late 2010s, is my understanding, 2018, 19. And it really involves a type of investment scam or romance fraud where the scammer tries to build a relationship with the victim. It starts out, just slow friends. It can take months of just building trust with these victims. And then eventually the scammer is going to bring up a cryptocurrency investment opportunity. And by that time, these victims are just so convinced that this person on the other end of the computer or whatever is, their friend, and they wouldn't lie to them, and they have trust in them. So slowly you start, the victims start sending in funds, buying cryptocurrency. The scammers have built elaborate websites that look pretty legitimate, where you can see your balance, you can watch your money grow. And in the beginning, the scammers will actually allow you, the victim, to withdraw some of your funds to provide, another, just to make it more legitimate, right? You can maybe they'll let you take out $1,000. However, as you see your balance grow and all of a sudden you've made several $100,000, you're going to want to take that money and maybe buy, a new car, a new house, what have you. When you try to get that money back, they're going to tell you that, there's fees that you have to pay, or there's taxes that you have to pay in order to get that money out. So I think the first thing that a victim would say was, well, why don't you, use the gains that I've made to pay those fees and to pay those taxes? And they will tell you that, that's not how it works. You need to send in additional funds to pay these fees. It's basically one, a last ditch effort for them to squeeze just a little bit more out of the victim. And then once, that doesn't happen, or the victim refuses to pay any more money, the scammer disappears. You're never going to hear from them again, and they have all your money.
Wow, I know a little bit about pig butchering, and I definitely learned a few things there. I like that part about the taxes as a one last way to get the last bit out. That's amazing. So let's say someone did fall victim to a pig butchering scheme and they lost all this money. Can they get money back from money they put in a cryptocurrency ATM?
So if it involves an ATM, it's really dependent on the state that you're in, as well as, did you report, how quickly did you report that this scam took place? Because I know there's some instances where, there's state law that says these crypto ATMs have to reimburse victims as long as they reported it, within a certain time period, say 30 days. And so they have that police report and they can show that to the Bitcoin ATM operator. But typically, maybe you're able to get some of the fees back. So, if you put in $200,000, maybe you can get some of the fees back that you paid when you, bought all that crypto. I've heard of that, but in terms of, getting your $200,000 back, that's pretty far in between. It's not a great chance of happening.
Right, and like you shared, this is a long play scam. They build trust, and it's over a long period of time where you've sent in that money, and it can be moved multiple places, and it's so hard to track. What do you tell victims that have lost money? I'm sure you've met people face to face or on the phone that have lost money in one of these scams. What do you tell them?
Yeah, I have, and unfortunately, it's a difficult conversation to have because like we talked about, right? The scam, they've been talking to this person for months, possibly over a year, who knows? So they have this relationship with this person. It's very hard for them to believe that they've been scammed. So a lot of time, the conversations that I have to have with them involve me trying to convince them that they're victim of a scam, that the person that you've been talking to isn't who you think they are. They're literally just trying to get more money out of you. So, you try to convince them of that. You definitely make sure to tell them you don't send in any more money.
Yeah.
Try to seek contact. I mean, I know, again, it's hard to stop talking to someone that you've probably been having conversations with every day for months. So I get that it's difficult. And, this happens to everyone. It happens to doctors. It happens to lawyers. It doesn't just happen to, it can literally happen to anybody. It doesn't matter the age. I know the elderly are certainly more vulnerable, and they're targets because likely, they have at their point of life, right? They have probably a significant retirement savings account, for example. So the scammers know that the elderly have a nest egg of some sort, where someone in their 20s, fresh out of college, they probably don't. So you're not going to get huge returns out of a younger person. So they definitely focus on the elderly. But yeah, and like you said, it is hard you can trace the funds, see where they go, and hope that you're able to freeze them. But, the money moves so fast and it ends up overseas in someone's account in a country that probably isn't going to be, willing to work with U.S. law enforcement.
Without mentioning any specific cases, what are some examples of dollar amounts that have been lost in cases that you've either reviewed or are aware of?
Yeah, a couple, probably 2 years ago now. This is just a good example. I was contacted by someone. He was retired recently, but he lost $750,000, where he was just sending, $50,000 to $100,000 at a time towards the end because he had so much trust in who he was talking to. So it's, it can vary. Obviously, some people catch it earlier on where maybe they've only lost, $10,000, $20,000, which is still significant for some people, right? But I have seen losses of over $1 million. And it completely ruins their life, right? Because you can't get that money back. You think you're making all this money in crypto and you're going to have, just so much to buy when you get those funds, and you never see it again. So it forces people to, file bankruptcy, have to go back to work maybe if you're retired. So it's a really sad situation, unfortunately.
Have you ever had a victim that absolutely refused to believe that they were truly a victim?
Yes. I was actually just talking to a colleague this morning about a situation that he was involved in. He was talking to a victim, and she believed that she was talking to a celebrity. And she was just 100% convinced that it was really him, and she wasn't being scammed. She was just unwilling to really answer the questions that he had for her in terms of, when did you start talking to him? What communication, like what phone number is he using and all that. She was very hesitant, wouldn't give up the answers, and she just refused that she was being scammed.
Wow. What agencies investigate cryptocurrency related scams?
I would say cryptocurrency related, like I said earlier, it's involved in almost everything these days. Even if the main scam is, cash or a wire transfer, a lot of times that still ends up in cryptocurrency. So I would say that every agency is working crypto in some fashion. Working scams, crypto-focused scams specifically, it's going to be FBI, IRS CI, Secret Service, but then you're going to have agencies like the DEA, right? They focus on drugs, but crypto is also a major component of the drug trafficking world these days. So even the DEA is going to have cryptocurrency experts on their teams. And then, there's going to be other agencies such as the SEC, the FTC, that will also look into different scams. And then, state and local PD, they're all over it as well. Because like I said, if you are being scammed, first thing you should do is I would encourage people to contact local PD. So they get contacted all the time. They also know how to do many of the same things that we would do, right? Trying to take the identifiers that are given to them by the victim and try to trace that money to see where it went, to see if they can freeze the funds and try to get it back for the victim.
So that segues right into my next question is, what tools do you have as a law enforcement agent to track down this money and to identify where it went?
So thankfully, we do have some really good tools. Primarily, I would say the biggest thing are going to be blockchain explorers. So if you're familiar with companies such as Chainalysis or TRM Labs, they make these tools that allow us to, so like I said, when you get an ATM receipt, it's going to have a wallet address on it. What we can do is plug that wallet address into these explorers, and it'll show us, what it'll show, basically give us a picture of that wallet, and we're able to trace those funds to see where they're going. And then, the biggest thing that it also does then is it gives us attribution. So it may go into a wallet and then get sent to Binance. And if that's the case, then, us as law enforcement, another tool that we have is subpoena power. So if we have an open investigation, we can issue a subpoena to Binance to have them tell us who owns that wallet at Binance where these funds went into. So those are huge. Within IRS CI, we have cybercrime units, or CCUs. We have 2 of those. There's one in Los Angeles and one in Washington, D.C. And they kind of specialize in large cyber cases, including cryptocurrency. So, they're the true experts. I'm not a part of that team, but they work the very large investigations, and they do their best to stay on top of the most recent tactics and tools that these scammers are using.
So earlier in the show, you had mentioned freezing funds. How does that work?
So if you end up realizing that the funds the victim sent are at Coinbase, we as law enforcement are able to reach out to Coinbase and ask them to freeze those funds because we know that it's scam related. Typically, they are willing to do that for us, and then we follow up with official legal process like a seizure warrant to get the funds back. So, I would say another tool that we have that's important is building relationships with all different kinds of partners, law enforcement, but also the private sector, including all of these different exchanges. Because if you have a good contact there, it just makes it quicker and more efficient for us to, get our hands on those funds to be able to freeze them. And, if we can freeze them while they're with an exchange that cooperates with law enforcement, the better chance we have of getting the money back for our victim.
What are the telltale signs of a pig butchering scheme? Like at our nonprofit, we're in the prevention business. We want to stop people from getting scammed in the first place so they don't even have to contact law enforcement. What would be those signs that people should spot at the beginning that would save them all this aggravation and loss of money?
So pig butchering scams typically start with unsolicited text messages or some sort of unsolicited contact, maybe an email. So if you receive a text message from a number that you don't recognize, or if you receive a phone call from someone that, it says spam, don't answer it. Don't reply to the text message. And the scammers are good because the text message is usually some sort of question where it kind of makes you feel bad if you don't respond,
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is it's going to say something to the effect of, hey, do you still want me to pick you up tomorrow for the party? Something like that. So you actually feel bad if you don't respond. So it makes you want to say, hey, sorry, you have the wrong number. I just wanted to let you know. Well, that right there, they just baited, they got you on the hook, because then they come back with, just conversation. They try to build conversation, and they're very good at getting people to talk to them. And that's how this starts. So definitely look out for these, just unsolicited text messages or emails. Don't click on any links that you're not familiar with. Those are going to be the big things in the beginning. And if you do start talking to someone and all of a sudden they say, hey, let's move over to WhatsApp or Signal, right? One of these encrypted messaging apps, that's another sign. Okay, just don't fall for that.
Right, because then at what point, how do they bring up the idea of investing in cryptocurrency?
Yeah, so like I said, it's not going to happen quick. Okay, they will build this relationship over weeks or months. And it'll be daily conversations. Just what are you doing today? What do you have going on? What are you doing after work? What do you do for work? Right? And they're not all. Some are romance related, right? There might be a pretty girl on the other end talking to a gentleman victim, but they're not all romance scams. There are also just friendships that are built, and by the time the scammer knows when they have the comfort, right, with their victim, and then all of a sudden they're just going to bring up like, hey, my uncle, he's an investor, and he's built this cryptocurrency algorithm that is just amazing at knowing when to buy and sell, and we've made so much money. Since we know each other so well and we've become friends, I kind of want to offer this to you if you're interested.
Wow.
I mean, they're not going to be pushy at first, but they'll keep bringing it up, and eventually the victim is going to see how this person is living. Maybe they're driving around in a Bentley. Maybe they have a great penthouse suite, in New York or something, right? And that just makes the victim want that life as well, typically. So eventually they'll start investing.
Wow, they're so creative, and there's so many different ways that I've heard that people approach, and the the way you just described it there was a slightly different angle, and I appreciate you sharing that. So let's say you have a friend or a family member who you suspect is being dragged into a pig butchering scheme. How do you extricate them before they lose everything?
I mean, it's tough because you need to have a difficult conversation with them, right? You really need to. I mean, I being in the position that in, I've seen this scam play out. I know the signs, so I have the education and the knowledge that I can share with them to hopefully convince them that it's a scam, right? That this is happening all over the world, that I've seen the signs. I know that this is not real. So it's doing your best to convince them that the relationship that they've built with this scammer is false. You can show them news articles, right? I mean, you and you can see how this thing plays out, and hopefully that convinces them, hey, this is exactly what I'm going through. Like maybe I am being scammed. So
Right.
it's really just working your magic and trying to convince them that what's happening is not true.
No, I know someone here in Arizona, and she had a family member who thought Keanu Reeves was going to come visit her, and she asked for my help, and I did the same thing you just suggested. I went online and found multiple articles where people had fallen for a scheme claiming that Keanu Reeves was interested in spending time with them, and it worked, because she could see it from, a neutral source, you
Yes.
know. Um, so it's absolutely amazing. Christopher, I want to give you the last word. Anything else I haven't asked you about today that you want to share with our audience?
I think the biggest thing is everyone needs to be their own investigator. And what I mean by that is you need to be able to really do some research on what's taking place in your life. If you're thinking that something is a little bit off, look into it a little bit more. Like, take your time. Do not rush. That's one thing that I don't think I brought up at any point yet, is there's usually a sense of urgency that, especially when it comes to the ATM related scams, right? The scammer is trying to quickly make the victim go to the ATM and put in money as soon as possible. So if something like that's happening, you just take your time. Okay, there is no warrant for your arrest if you don't pay some fine in crypto. Like, that is not a thing. So just take your time, think things through, discuss it with family members, if you're comfortable doing that. If you haven't, I think a good rule of thumb is to not send money to someone you've never met, face to face, or someone you're not familiar with. Okay, no government agency is going to make you pay some sort of fine or fee in cryptocurrency. That's just not going to happen. So, like I said, just try to be your own investigator, because unfortunately, there's not enough of us. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I wish there were more. As you know, right? There's never enough of us. There's never enough funding. So we can't help everybody, but we can do our best to try to educate and get the word out there, so people don't fall for victims such as these.
Thank you. So before we close out, I just want to tell everybody what we're doing next week on the show. We have another guest. It's my new friend, Rachel, who I met at a senior expo. And Rachel is going to share her story where she actually was contacted by a scammer, and she was being directed to one of these cryptocurrency ATMs, and she was going down the path of getting scammed. And there were some red flags that popped up, some warning signs, and she was able to get off that path. So she's going to be very brave and share her story next Tuesday morning. So I'm looking forward to that. Christopher, I want to thank you for spending your time with us today. And I want to thank you for sharing your expertise and your knowledge. And you covered this topic extremely well. I'm not surprised. That's why I brought you on, because I saw you on a TV show last year up in the Phoenix area talk about pig butchering, and you explain it so well. I think everyone's a little bit smarter after listening to you today.
I hope so. I really appreciate it, Brian. This was fun. It was great seeing you.
All right, everybody. Thank you for watching. Let's Talk About Scams. We'll see you next Tuesday morning. Have a great day.
Well, that's all the knowledge for this episode. Tune in every Tuesday at 8 a.m. Pacific Time on K4HD Radio at k4hd.com as Joyce explores a variety of knowledge so you have the power to make scam protection your healthy habit. And until then, feel free to reach out to Joyce and let's talk about scams.